These 5 days, I'm gonna give you some of the best strategies that have helped me grow from nothing to over $6 billion a year in business across all my companies. And I'm not just gonna teach you my tools, I'm gonna teach you what I've learned from the greatest entrepreneurs in the world. You're also gonna learn from each other.
Every business has 3 to 5 key numbers that if you identify what those are, you're gonna have no choice but to absolutely destroy your goals in your business.
The business mastery for me is for anyone in any business, you will go home with every single tool you need to create the business you've ever dreamed of.
Business Mastery is 5 days of not just learning Tony's strategies, but also learning from some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world. And what you're about to hear is exactly that. Tony digging into some of the secrets of success from 2 totally different brands that are both now household names. So enjoy this episode where Tony interviews Payal Kadakia, the co-founder and CEO of ClassPass, and Dave Dahl, the co-founder of Dave's Killer Bread. You can find out more about Business Mastery at www.tonyrobbins.com/businessmastery.
The first person I'm going to introduce you to is a true unicorn. If you know what I mean in business, it's a person who built a company from scratch to over $1 billion valuation. She was the first unicorn of the decade with a little company called ClassPass. How many are familiar with ClassPass out there, ladies and gentlemen? This woman, Payal Kadakia, started this company in 2013. And she did it because she gave herself a very limited amount of time. She had worked, she went to MIT and she worked in, Bain, and she also worked at Warner's. And while she was at Warner's, she decided to give herself, I think it was 14 days, I'll have to clarify with her, to come up with a business idea. And that was 2013, and now the business valued over $1 billion, 100 million hours of workouts in more than 30 countries. So let's bring her up. Please welcome Payal. Payal, very nice to meet you.
Thanks. Nice
We share a lot of philosophy together about living life fully and completely, and you certainly are doing that. But I'd like to start a little bit early in the beginning. You referenced a little bit about your heritage and how important it is to you, and I know you were bullied as a kid, and so many people get bullied and they let it run them over, and kind of maybe you hid your heritage for a period of time. What changed that, and how much has your heritage played a role in your capacity to succeed on such a large scale?
I think when I faced that adversity, it forced me to look deeper into who I was and where I came from.
Yeah.
And that led me on this beautiful journey of finding my passion, which was dance. And I had found this amazing teacher who started training me when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
My mom's best friend. And, most Indian girls actually in America are put in dance classes when they're younger too. But I found her to be a guru to me. And she taught me a way of life more than just even teaching me dance. And that relationship was a fundamental part of my life. And I found this way to appreciate where I came from, the women that I was a part of from India, and I found it beautiful. And that's when I started expressing the layers of who I was as a human being, and I started performing, and I started dancing, and by the time I went to college, I was so proud of who I was. But it took me a little bit to get there, but I think it's these passions and these teachers in our life that help us really see the true part of who we are.
Tell me, what were some of the things that your guru, your dance guru, taught you that are stay with you and have guided you?
In India, a guru is someone who passes down knowledge to you, right? And that's why you respect them so much. And it was a way to show up, right? It was a lot about, and I know they're like, show up on time, have your hair up and be prepared, practice. It's a lot of these philosophies that, of course, are important in the dance class, but they are important to life. It is about being present. It is putting all your work into something. She didn't want us to make excuses, right? If we couldn't do a step, she would just simply look at us and sort of give us a side eye. And that was you knowing that, why didn't you practice? Or why didn't you go home and work hard enough?
Yeah.
And these are rules for life.
Yes.
You can always get better at something. If you can't do something, you put in some extra hours of work and you will always figure out how to learn it. And I think that's what she taught me at such a young age, that everything is mine if I want it to be, and everything that I ever want to achieve is within my capacity.
Yeah. You have the responsibility and the opportunity rather than the blame.
Absolutely.
It's unfortunately not a current philosophy for a lot of kids today. It's not their fault. It's just they've been taught something different. It's beautiful that you found that heritage. I find your story so exciting, but what I also love about your story is it wasn't just easy. It didn't just instantly come together. Your first two approaches failed. So I'd love to talk about the failure and what you learned from it, because a lot of people, they fail once and that's it. They don't ever want to go through that again. But obviously, you didn't have one, you had two, and you just keep, iterating, it sounds like. But tell me, what was that like? And before you tell me that, what's it like to have built something that you could be so proud of that's helped so many lives around the world in 30 countries, 100 million workouts? That's pretty awesome. So what does that feel like? And then the contrast that to the early failures and what you learned from them, if you don't mind.
I feel humbled in the sense that I've been able and I've had the honor of working on solving this problem. To me, it was a problem I faced in the beginning that I wanted to solve. It was never about how big it was going to be, what valuation we were going to get, how much money we would make. It really came from a mission.
Yeah.
And so to me, I always talk about this, but it's so important. When it didn't work the first time, and then the second time, we started getting people to get to class. And my heart jumped for joy when that first person booked that class. And I feel the same on the 100 millionth reservation.
That's beautiful.
And that to me is the important thing, is that you don't lose that connection to your why. Yeah. And to be honest, in the beginning, I think I made a mistake because I lost that, or I didn't even know what that was. I kind of was, what I call false signals of success, in the sense of it's really easy to get tied to how much money did you raise, how much press you're getting, how many followers you have. We got into this amazing incubator program, and all those things made me feel like I was succeeding, but I forgot the most important thing was to build a product that worked.
Yes.
And that was solving what I wanted to. And once I realized that, I threw everything else out and I went back to that and I worked hard. I built a scrappy product. I think in the tech world, we talk about this thing called an MVP, which is your minimal viable product. And instead of spending a year, which I did the first time, and I spent $500,000 building a product that completely didn't work. This was, me staying
up.
What
was that first product? Let me interrupt you because I want to know the difference.
Yeah, it was an open table for classes. So there was no membership.
Okay.
It was just like a database of classes that you could book.
Look it up and decide where to go. And then you contacted them yourself as opposed to going through your organization. Is that the difference?
No, you could actually book it on the site. But it is so interesting because it's a customer behavior challenge in the sense of, it's interesting when you list a bunch of stuff, but people have fear, which I know you probably think about so much time. It was too many brain cycles for people to get through to book that class. But when we made it a membership, we made it a community, we made it a value proposition, and we made it about discovery. So now it became, I can't wait to go to these classes versus all the things that were standing in my way. Yeah. And you already paid, So it sort of unleashed you to make you feel like these classes were gifts to you versus feeling like pressure and fear.
Yeah.
And we just unleashed the psychology of making, fitness fun, right? People started looking forward to classes. So, back to the original question, it really became about what was not working was people weren't not going to class. And I realized that most people, and I'll be honest, I'm a 4'11" human being. Like, I am scared of working out. I am scared of weights. I never felt like fitness was for me. But then I started realizing I wanted to build a product that made it feel accessible. That it made somebody who was scared to be able to, clip in their spin bikes in a class, right? Or wasn't flexible, feel comfortable trying a yoga class. And on the flip side, all these businesses wanted more people, right? They needed more people. There was a huge surge of boutique fitness classes opening up, and many of them needed new clients in the door, and they were trying to find ways of doing it, even giving away classes for free. Yeah. So that's when we started realizing there was this beautiful way, if we could find the right pricing, the right value proposition, and inspire people and motivate them to actually go.
And what did you change that, first of all, they made the decision just to become a member and have access. They'd have to make all these individual decisions, right or wrong, so I get that. But what else did you do to create that inspiration in your site that made it go? And what was the difference between version 1, version 2, and version 3?
Yep, so version 1 was a simple open table for classes. Like I said, we didn't do much research on the customer side. It was literally a tech plugin for us on the back end. It was sort of a, do-it-yourself model. Yeah. The second one was a 1-month discovery pass where we put together these free classes studio owners had. You had 1 month to try 10 different classes. They had to be different ones that you've never been to before. Okay, and you had 1 month. So this gave everyone a nice timeline, right, to say, okay, I have 30 days. Let me go to a yoga class, spin class, Zumba class, get it all done. they loved it so much that people started frauding us in the sense they were buying that product over and over again with different email addresses.
Different emails, yes.
Right? So
Start
then
gaming the system.
Yeah, and at first, your instinct, right, especially is to say, no, you can't do that. And as people started doing this more and more, I remember as an entrepreneur thinking, wait a second, they want to do something. They want to give us more money, and we're saying no.
Yeah.
And that's when we did a survey. We asked them, we're like, if you could do this monthly, would you do it? And 95% of them said yes. And that was the bingo moment. They loved variety.
Yes.
That was actually what was sort of missing, right? If you subscribe to one gym or one studio, you don't necessarily get that variety feeling that, gets you out of your fitness routine when you need to. And then most people end up falling out. And so this was what sort of inspired a whole new program for everyone. And that was really the difference. So the third one was really the monthly membership versus the 1 month pass.
So you got convenience and variety. And then, one of the things that I try to talk to entrepreneurs, and a lot of new entrepreneurs are not coming up in the tech industry. They don't get incubated. And so they're always trying to make the perfect product. And minimum viable product is common in that tech industry, but not for the general public. Why is that so important? And how did, like you said, you spent $500,000 on which one? Phase 1 or phase 2?
Phase 1. Phase 2 was me and 3 people hacking it together. If someone made a reservation, we were there at 4 a.m. fulfilling it. We just did not care.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you spent all this money, didn't get the result, spent less money, and then eventually found by actually doing your business and talking to your clients what they really needed, what they really wanted. I'm sure do you coach other entrepreneurs? Do you mentor people?
Yeah, I
would assume
advise.
you must,
I absolutely
right?
advise, yeah.
What advice do you give entrepreneurs that are beginning the journey who are uptight about making a perfect product?
I consider myself, and I believe most entrepreneurs who truly believe in what they're building, to be mission obsessed, not product obsessed.
I love that.
Right? Yeah. It's not about a product. It is about what you decided to solve in the world. Your product will change. It will change many times.
Yes.
But your mission should not. Right? Your why. Because your why is your true north. It helps guide you through challenges, through, ups and downs that you're going to face. If you don't really care about your why, you will give up the first time it doesn't work. And let me tell you something. There's going to be many times it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
I
you
always
just
tell
have
people
to be
you
okay with
got to
that.
fall in love with your client, not your product or service.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Fall in love with your ideal clients and meet their needs, and the product will move.
Have to care about something, right? And I think, for me, I felt like every part of my life brought me to that moment to solve this problem for other people. And, that's why it's 10 years later and I still love what I do, because I care so deeply about the problem I set out to. And I still feel like we're just getting started.
Well, you had massive momentum, and then you bumped up this thing called COVID, just like I did. And you have live classes. Mine are live classes. And so I'd usually have 12,000, 15,000 people in a stadium, and all of a sudden it was illegal to have more than 10 people. So you did something really beautiful. And again, this is why I really wanted to bring you out, even more than your success, because anyone can be fortunate enough to find a niche, work their tail off and make it happen. But it's very different to have the kind of resiliency that when all hell breaks loose and your business is now being governed in a completely different way, to find the solution. So tell us a little about what happened when COVID hit. How much we lost 95% of our business. What percentage of business did you lose? And then how did you adapt?
95% of our revenue was gone within a week. And, we froze all of our accounts. Obviously, our studios were shut down. We had come off of our best month ever and our billion-dollar valuation. Like, we literally hit that moment in January.
Right before this?
And then COVID happened. So it was a shock to the system. But, as we were just talking about, the DNA of our company is about iterating and pivoting. It wasn't about, oh no, what are we going to do? It became, well, how are we going to solve this? Yep. We want to keep people working out, and we need to keep our studios alive. And all of our attention went to solving those problems right away. And thankfully, we had been experimenting with video in the past few years. So we had this amazing product. It wasn't perfect. We just flipped the whole entire site and made it so people could use all of our digital products. That we got our studios to do live streaming.
And you didn't have any digital action online before that, correct?
We had a few things like in the making, but it wasn't our main product. It by no means was anywhere comparable to our current site.
Yes.
But within our week, the whole team just flipped the site. And I think that's what shows you what resilience and pivoting. Yeah. And we don't get scared. I always think about this moment. We changed our name in 2014. I started the company in 2011.
Okay.
And so we've actually changed our name 3 times as a company.
What were the first 2?
It was Dabble Now, then it was Classtivity, and then it was ClassPass.
Okay.
And, I remember that day when we decided to change the name to ClassPass. It was because, by the way, the product was called the Classtivity ClassPass. That's a mouthful. So we knew we had to change it. And we thankfully got the domain and all of that for ClassPass. And it was scary, right? We had a lot of branding, a lot of marketing, but you have to think ahead and what's going to be best in the future. And I think that's what really has gotten us through the course of COVID. We know there's a beautiful future ahead, and there's a way of keeping people still engaged and giving them something in the magic of ClassPass, even if it's virtually.
Now, you now have like 50,000 live classes that people can do from their homes. So, Peloton obviously provided kind of a nice opportunity, just like having, Zoom and technologies like this has changed the world. Great that it happened right before all this happened for all of us to be able to continue to serve people. But how did you go about getting all those classes? Were they classes that already existed? Did you go to people and have them create classes online with Zoom? How did you go about it, just out of curiosity? And how did you get so many classes so rapidly?
Well, so many of our studios also very quickly went to Zoom, right? They needed to keep their clientele. They wanted to keep teaching, right? As a teacher, you crave teaching your students.
I understand.
Right? Of course. And so we wanted to make sure that was easier. We wanted to give them more, once again, marketing, right? And being able to compile all that information. It's impossible to get an email from every one of your favorite studios and know what time their classes are. So once again, we went back to the convenience and the variety. That was the magic of the product, and listed it all in one place.
Yes.
People had a subscription, they had credits, they could use it to book these live stream classes and our on-demand classes. And so a lot of it was, makeshift. I won't say, once again, it wasn't a perfect product, but we put up what we could to keep people engaged.
And what was the response? And how's the business doing? Is our classes, I'm sorry for my ignorance, but are classes more open now?
Yeah.
Around the country and around the world?
Around the world, we're definitely seeing, people going back to classes. The really great thing is they're working out more. So for the members who have come back in places that are open, they are actually working out in a more engaged way. And I think it's because everyone was missing in-person classes. And I think we will see, and we're starting to see already, that there's a hybrid model of the at-home workout. I think this broke a lot of people's fears down on how to actually embrace working out at home.
Yeah.
But I still think, and I think we know that this is the magic of it, is people still love in person, right? And there's something that happens when we're excited to get people back to experiences and working out. And we even pivoted into beauty and wellness a bit. So you can book things like massages and nails and beauty and other experiences that are less, COVID intense.
Yes.
And I think that's, once again, it's pivoting. It's, our mission necessarily wasn't tied to fitness always. It was to give people soul nurturing experiences.
Oh, love that.
So that's
beautiful.
Very wide. And we always knew that we would go into other experiences. And to be completely honest, when I started the site, I had creative classes on there too, like cooking and drama and music. We just had to focus. Focus is important when you're starting a business.
Yeah.
So we focused. And now that we had, this time, which we never had a chance to focus on a lot of those categories because we were so busy, this gave us a great time to actually even change our product and do a little bit more research on how to expand into the other categories we always wanted to.
Has COVID become a gift for you then? Are you actually having a larger business now because you'll have both the online and the offline type of experiences? Or what's your view of it?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's given us such a great time to work on learning more about our product, being able to, figure out what our customers need, our partners need. I think the thing that we all don't know, and that, as a company, we always look at too, is consumer behavior is going to change on the other end of this.
Yeah.
And none of us can predict it. But what I know is we're ready for both.
Great. I think I read someplace you talked about how you're willing to break anything to make things better. Or I'm probably misparaphrasing. Is that what you said?
It's something like that, most likely. Like I said,
what have you had to break along the way in order to make your business more effective? I think that's something that is admirable. Most people are so afraid to fail and are afraid to break anything. If it's working, don't mess with it. And then what I always tell people is there's two businesses you got to manage, the business you're in and the business you're becoming.
Yeah.
If you only work in the business you're becoming, you don't manage your current business, you're in trouble. If you only work on this, someone's going to displace you. So tell me your philosophy of breaking it, and where have you broken things to make it better?
I'll tell you a story. When I was in the middle of pivoting from the Passport, which was the second product, to ClassPass, my advisor said to me, he goes, the Passport is cracked to you guys. It'll be a chapter in your book one day. And I didn't understand what he meant by that because I wanted to keep it. I was too scared to let it go because it was providing us reservations and revenue.
Yeah.
And in the halls of ClassPass today, Passport is like a data field, right, for my tech guys. Yeah. And people will be like, what is that? And I'll be like, it really is a chapter in the book. But I think what he was trying to say at the time is exactly what you're talking about. Is it's about focus, and I needed it at the time to help me get over. But I remember by the time we changed our name, I knew I had to shut down the other products, and it was time to focus and go all in. And it's okay if you need to iterate, just do it in a scrappy way. Don't be spending a lot of money, don't do things that are bad for your team and your resources. Manage your business well.
Yes. I see, if I read correctly, I think you raised like $500 million over time.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Tell us how you went about that, and what was it, the kind of advisors you had? Was it the network you had already created? What made it possible for you to raise that much capital, and over what period of time did you do it?
Well, so I started the company in 2011. So that was a long time ago. In the beginning, I raised friends and family, and that came from my network. That came from people who had seen my background, whether it was dancing, my Bain, MIT sort of resume. And
What was that first raise size, just by contract?
Yeah, $1 million total.
$1 million,
Over
great.
2 years, I raised $1 million
Okay, great.
on a convertible note. The next round was a $2 million seed round, but that took me 3 years to get to.
So 5 years to get to where you raised $2 million total.
3 years.
3 million.
Yeah, 3 years until I got to $2 million. And in between there, I had gone out to Silicon Valley twice, and I had gotten a lot of no's. So just want everyone to know it's not easy. Like, I went out there, I didn't have a product that was working. I had these makeshift ideas, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't fully working at the time. And by the time I got to that $2 million round, though, I knew I had built magic because ClassPass started working. We had this hockey stick growth curve, which is like for investors is gold.
Yep.
And then it became easier to raise. Then it became about, tackling competition. It almost became about, can we raise enough capital to make sure we continue to be able to protect our mission, protect our businesses. And, then it was just feet on the street and we moved really fast. So after $2 million, we raised $40 million.
Wow.
Yep. And then after 40, it went on. We did a bridge round of 30. And over time, we've raised a lot of capital.
Okay.
But this is a capital intensive business, right? So to launch a city, it requires our team to go and get studios, to be able to do marketing. And we have that down. We know exactly how much it takes to launch a city, get it together. And we're all over the world now. So every single time we want to expand and grow,
got a
we do a
model.
capital raise, we push it through. And then the business, we know the playbook.
How many employees do you have? And tell me a little bit about how you create culture, because we both know culture is everything in the end. Otherwise, it's just you.
Yeah.
So how many employees do you have? How much have you ramped that up over time? And what is your culture, and how do you reinforce the culture since you're working in 30 countries?
So, we have over 500 employees now across the company, across the globe, and now everyone's even remote and stuff, so I can't even tell you what the office situation looks like as much anymore because it's moved around quite a bit. But, it's been incredible to watch the team grow over time. I think as an entrepreneur, when you start, you're not necessarily thinking about your team in the beginning, you're thinking about building something. And, I had this moment where we finally had an office in New York City in 2014. It was, a beautiful office that we took like a year to kind of build. And I remember walking in and seeing all the desks and realizing, wow, like these people really made this business. And I think what I realized in that moment is culture comes from the people who work for you. It is about them, right? And at the end of the day, as a leader, you can't dictate what the culture is. You can lead and they can be inspired from it. And I think one of the things that's so magical about ClassPass is how much we love the product. People come to work in workout clothes. They go to class for lunch, and it's totally okay. I think people always walk in and they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, no, we're in our leggings, we're in our workout gear. That person's going to their favorite bar workout. I'll sometimes join them if I can. But that's the culture. It's because we live and breathe who we are. And I think over time, we've also learned to recruit from our product. So there are a lot of people and members who use our product who we then ask to.
They're raving fans. So.
Exactly. They're the best people to keep us, innovating and making sure that our product works, right? If people are complaining about your product, you have to listen. I think it's like you can't dictate and tell people what to do. You cannot tell your customers what to do. You have to hear what their problems are and try and solve it.
What's been one of the biggest challenges you faced over the years in this decade of building the business? I mean, COVID obviously would have to be a pretty big one.
Yeah.
Is there another one? And I'm curious how you dealt with it, because I just love seeing the patterns of how people solve problems.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the whole thing was solving this problem of really getting someone to class. I think it feels
one thing to sign
small.
up, another to show up.
Yeah, like I said, 100 million reservations, that's 100 million hours of people's lives that wouldn't have happened before this product.
That's pretty incredibly
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really awesome.
And it's really meaningful to know that, that this wouldn't have existed in any way. I remember taking class in the middle of Hong Kong, and I was with a bunch of people. We didn't even speak the same language, but we were having the same human experience. And I think products that change people's lives, like ClassPass has, they're products that last. And I think for me as an entrepreneur, like I've always wanted to build something timeless, and those are products that will outlast you, right? And that's because it's got something that is about the human spirit. And that was what I always strive to do.
I love your connection to your mission. It's unfortunately rare. People start out with it, as you said, and then they get caught up in the business of the business. So it's beautiful that it's part of your soul, not just your head or your heart. I'm curious. So, everybody has things they think are their limitations, and the culture tries to create limitations. And for some people in business have been thinking they're female or thinking they're a woman of color. Those things have not even slightly stopped you. You just crushed it. How have you taken the expectations of limitations that other people have and used it to your advantage? Because you clearly have.
Growing up, I definitely had a lot of expectations on me. I think when you're the daughter of, immigrants, you want to make them proud, right? It was straight A's, go to MIT, get a good...
Are you the oldest?
I'm the youngest.
Oh, the youngest.
Yeah, and I think for me, I knew I had to get off the train at some point, right? And that was sort of this journey I went through when I was at Bain, and I realized how much I loved to dance, and I didn't want to follow the business school route, and I wanted to chart my own journey.
Yeah.
And I had to get off, but... That all being said, the foundation of my education is such an important reason I am who I am, right? The network it provided me, the opportunities it gave me, it made it easier for me to get some of those checks, 100%.
Yes.
And that's because my parents took a huge risk and invested in that philosophy of making sure that education was there. So that's like a very big part of it. And I think the other side of it, being a woman of color, I think I am who I am, and I've achieved what I have to date because I'm an Indian woman.
Yes.
Right?
Give her a hand for that. That's beautiful.
Thank you. It's truly not a weakness in any way. I see someone like my mom, and I know if she was given another opportunity or lived in a different time in the world, she would have done what I did or even more. Yeah. And it's because it's in our blood to work that hard, to have that sense of duty. And that's what I was given by where I came from. And I never will let that go. And I know that's exactly why I am sitting here today.
It's beautiful. Well, my wife and I go to India about once every other year. We bring a lot of our platinum partners about every 2 years. We have such a love for the culture, for the very things you described. That and a connection to spirit, to soul, which is part of the culture to some extent. And I think for all of you, one of the great things is to understand your heritage and to find the strengths in your heritage instead of what you might perceive as the weakness in your heritage or your gender or your background or your color, or whatever the case may be. Well, last question, then I'm going to ask you to stay if you mind. We're going to enter a second entrepreneur, and then we're going to do some questions from the group for all of you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Tell me about failure and how you look at it, because almost every great entrepreneur I know has a radically different view of failure than the average person. It's why they are who they are. What's your view of failure? Where'd you learn it? How does it practically impact the quality of your business and your life?
Failure is a data point. That's all it is.
It's a what?
Data point.
Data point.
It's a part of the journey. If you want success, you're going to experience failure. They're just 2 points in the journey, and you have to be able to deal with it. If you want to be successful, and you can feel that. And by the way, success is the moment too. It's all a data point, right?
That's true.
You're just on a journey to arrive somewhere else, and it's going to have ups and downs. And it's what you learn from that moment that's most important.
That's beautiful. Stay with us if you will, but let's give a hand here to Payal, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for us. So I really like to create contrast in the journey of entrepreneurs. But no matter what you'll find, the journey may be different. The journey was certainly different for our next entrepreneur we're going to interview. Amazingly successful as well. But it had plenty of ups and downs like all journeys do, and the mindset becomes one of the most important components. So the person you're about to meet's name is Dahl. And Dave created Dave's Killer Bread, which I know there are a lot of fans out there. Make some noise if you like Dave's Killer Bread out there. He has a different story. His entrepreneurial journey started in prison. He went for 4 different sentences over 15 years until in 2004 he got out and changed his life and became an example of what's possible. Came up with a new recipe, went back to the family's bakery and joined his brother, who gave him a second chance. And they started out there in Portland in the farmer's market and started marketing it. And 6 years later, they were one of the top fastest growing companies in the United States in Inc. magazine. 2015, literally 11 years later, he sells his business for $275 million and shows people what's really possible. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dave Dahl, Dave Killer's Bread. Dave, such a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
What an honor. Thank you.
Listen, I like to start in the beginning because that's where it is for people. You had an interesting childhood. You kind of grew up going to church, being with both parents. You got, 3 siblings? Is that right?
I have, 3 siblings.
3 siblings. And then things went kind of sideways, and yet you've turned your life around and become such an example. Tell us, how do you go from a kid growing up in that kind of environment to addicted, to selling meth, to becoming a businessman, to selling your business, to being an art collector and a philanthropist? I mean, you've taken on every journey you can imagine. Tell us a little bit about the journey, if you don't mind.
Quite a journey, yeah. I had such low self-esteem as a child, and I really didn't know what I was, I didn't think I was cut out for anything. And I guess essentially, my family had a bakery, so I grew up with this weird family with this weird bakery, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. So, one thing led to another. Depression led to methamphetamine. And I shot a load of methamphetamine, changed everything. It's my first transformation, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened on the other side of it, though, when you came down?
Well, it was never a good thing, right? It led to 4 trips to prison. Trust me, it's not the kind of transformation you want to have. I eventually did have a good one, though.
Yeah, you sure did.
Yeah.
So when did this transformation happen? You've been in prison 4 times. You go 15 years. I mean, each time you were in, what was the difference this last time that you went? And did you get a vision while you were there? Did you just set a goal? Because a big part of your life is there's greatness in everybody. You didn't believe that before. When did that transformation start to happen in you? Or was it just the idea that you want to do something different?
For me, it was hitting a bottom. And, I hit a lot of bottoms. But this particular one was, I was definitely thinking about suicide quite a bit in there. And it was my 4th trip to prison. I had 7.5 years that I ended up doing. It was like a 118-month sentence. But anyway, long story short, I'd been on a waiting list for like 3 years to get into this drafting program, which, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah.
But at the same time that I had an opportunity to get into this program, I also asked for help. And I think this is the most important part of my story, is that I was willing to ask for help. And it's the humility of that I discovered was the most powerful thing I ever learned.
Was it freeing?
Was it what?
What did it feel like? Was it freeing to you? Was it comforting? What was asking for help? What and having that humility? How did it shift you emotionally?
That's a really good question. It was transformative in a way, and the beginning of it was just so powerful because no longer was I, worried about what anybody thought of me. That's a great feeling. All of a sudden, you got this moment where you just, and from that point on, you really don't need anybody to approve. And that was a big beginning for me. But it also gave me medication. I got medication. And for me, the medication helped. And then I, shortly afterwards, got to go into a program that changed my life.
And what was the program?
It was computer-aided drafting.
And what did you learn? What did you experience there?
Well, I've always been sort of artistic a little bit, right? And the bread was sort of art. But this was a little different because it's very structured. So you're drafting up ideas. If somebody has an idea for something, and I would have ideas, but lots of times I would just work with other people who had ideas. I would draw up this idea, and then I would, the way it's so powerful nowadays with the computers, you can just modify it just like that, and come up with new ideas,
Yeah. And it lit you up to do this, it sounds like. You started to become a creator instead of just a manager of your life to some extent. Is that true?
Right. It's the first time in my life I was able to have a sustained happiness. I it was a great. It was. I don't know. What was your question again?
Well, I was saying from a perspective of now you were creating things as opposed to kind of managing your life. Was that sense of creation, was that the liberating factor that made you happier?
That's really important because for me, learning to design things has a effect on everything in your life.
Yeah.
The mentality that it takes to design products, design your life.
Yes.
It all works together. It's like
designing products started to make you think about designing your life.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
It's all the same symbolism,
That's awesome. And that was happening in prison, is that correct? You had this class?
That's where I learned it, yeah. That's where I began to learn it, yeah.
So when you got out, did you decide you were going to go back in the bakery? Did you talk to your brother Glenn? Did he invite you back? Did you guys have a good relationship, or was he upset with you? What was his?
Never. You know what? In the early days, I guess we did as youngsters, because he's like 8 years older than me, so I always looked up to him as a kid. But then we became estranged more later, and Glenn's just a really good guy. Way different from my dad, way different from me. He's just this guy, but the challenge was to communicate well enough to say that we can get along, and it's that humility that made me think I could do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm nobody, right? I mean I'm somebody, but I'm nobody.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't need to prove nothing.
Yeah.
And I thought I could do it, but it was a lot harder than I thought.
When you said you asked for help, was that other people, or was that God, or was that both?
When I say ask for help, I certainly look at a higher power, but I often look at people who, through evidence-based knowledge.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah, through maybe empirical thinking.
Yes.
Whatever you go, okay, this person can help me.
Yes.
And again, humility is such a big factor.
So Glenn felt that humility. He felt the change in you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And that made him willing to trust and say, let's do this together. And did you come to him with the idea of building a new recipe, or did you already have that idea, or did that happen after you came to work in the bakery again?
That's funny, because he always knew that I was creative, right? And so if you asked him, he'd say, well, that was like the X factor of bringing Dave back, right? Yeah. But whoever thinks you're going to have that kind of success, right? So I got back there, and I went to work for $12 an hour, just like everybody else.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's called humble, right?
Yeah. It's a reminder to be humble. Yeah. So, and I lived in my mom's garage. Yeah. And I was happy. And I was working my ass off. And so we had, I got paid for 40 hours a week, but I worked 70. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. Like every entrepreneur.
Because I was creating something. Yeah.
See, probably all nodding their head over there as well.
Yeah.
We all know what that's like. It's called life when you own a business.
Exactly. And I think people need to remember that. It's a really important lesson. Work ethic is crucial. So I did that, and my brother and I were talking, and he's like, okay, well, we need you to fix the cookies right now. We had cookies then. We need you to make the cookies more modern so that they don't have all these trans fats and all this stuff. But I went a little further and made them vegan. You know what I mean? So anyway, I made the cookies, and now I'm working on a bunch of new ideas in cookies. And my brother comes along and he goes, no, man, this was just an assignment. We want you to make bread. And I'm like, oh, bread? Oh, man, that's a whole different ball game. A lot harder, actually. Bread is a much more difficult, thing to create or to figure out.
Yeah. Especially in a healthy form with consistency.
Yeah, that too, yeah. Well, I did have a head start in that sense because my dad was that guy, that way, was a healthy bread guy, you know what I mean? And Glenn was too, so I have to be so, part of humility is to say, I couldn't have done this without those folks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's beautiful, Dave.
So, it's hard for me to say that, but I did.
Well, you built the muscle, though. That's a good thing, right?
Humility muscle.
Well, none of us does it alone. Well, tell me so they gave you the assignment to do the bread, You obviously couldn't have known it would become as big as it was.
No.
Tell me about the branding. How important was that brand? What was the name of the old company, the old bakery? And tell me of the decision and how your brother responded to it.
Yeah.
How'd this come about?
Well, Nature Bake was the old brand, but there was other brands before that. I mean, the thing had been around for 50 years. It was, right around 50 years when I started doing this. And so we were trying to brand Nature Bake. We didn't know we needed to brand something else, It was just like, in fact, in my mind, I always wanted to make bread that would be part of the family business.
Yes.
But it kind of went its own way, and it just happened by seat of the pants, I guess. What happened was my brother wanted to call the bread Dave's bread. And I'm like, Dave's bread? Who cares about Dave's bread? You know what I mean? And then, but okay. But if we're going to do that, then we need to tell my story.
Beautiful.
How can we do that and not tell my story? And I also felt, in my gut, I guess, that telling my story mattered.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I didn't know how much it mattered until later. But, so I wrote on the back of the bag my story. It's not there anymore. The story that I wrote is no longer there. But you see just a little bit of it in that video you showed.
Yeah.
So anyway, this has been very personal from the beginning. And I took it to the farmer's market. The killer part, the second variety of bread I made was called Killer Bread. And so eventually it was like, people were like, that's Dave's Killer Bread. And I just started rolling that way. Yeah. And then I made like 15 varieties, 16 or whatever. I had a blast doing it, always improving the breads as I went, the best I could. It's tough once you have a product that people expect.
Yes.
You don't really want to change it that much.
Yeah. They like the music they like.
Yeah.
That's true. But notice in both cases, and every great entrepreneur I know, if I think you look at any business, it's all innovation and marketing, right? If you don't innovate, if you don't keep finding a way to make it better, and if you don't market, no one's going to want to have interest. And so you started there in Portland, and I remember at one stage, if I was reading your story, if it's correct, you made a huge bet, the two of you and your brother. You went and found a new facility. It was like $1.5 million, and you didn't have the cash flow to cover it.
Yeah.
And like 6 years later, you're doing $53 million.
Yeah.
But why did you make that choice? How difficult was it? And, how did you make it work? Because, everybody's an entrepreneur has to take risks. And everybody says they like taking risks until they do it and they lose, right? Yeah. And I'm seeing Pi all over here making the same nod. So how did you get yourself to do that? Why'd you do it? And did it make a difference? If you hadn't done that, would it be a different business? I'm curious.
Great question. Originally, we did kind of discuss it amongst ourselves, like, do we want to just be kind of famous up here in Portland,
Yeah.
But I was always like, my nephew, who's also a partner of mine, he and I were always on the side of you got to grow or you're going to get swallowed up,
True.
And so that's what we did. But $1.5 million was a hell of a lot of money in those days. And we couldn't get it. It was 2008. That's what we needed to move in order to do Costco. And if we hadn't grown to do Costco, I don't know what would have happened. We always had to take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah. And you grabbed them, no matter how scary it was.
It was scary. It was hard. We fought a lot. Man, the reality is what it is, man. It's not easy.
So tell me, at what point after that, did you make it so you didn't have to worry about that? At what point was cash flow no longer a concern?
I don't think it ever was.
I could get fist bump on that. That's called business, right?
Yeah. Like in the Dave's Killer Bread business, it was always growing, so we were always putting the money back into the business, essentially. But we did start having money. We started being able to buy houses and cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, started having quality of life as well.
Yeah. We had a good. I've never been about material stuff, but it is kind of nice to have it,
That's right. That's wonderful.
And I'm more about. I get excited about innovation, like you said, things that are when I can actually make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
I get off on that.
Yeah, you can see it in your face as you talk about it. Same with Payal, right? You just light up every one of us, every great, because in the beginning of a business, the rewards are not there economically. It's like having a child.
Right.
The rewards are ownership. This is my kid. But as time goes by and you start to build something that has impact, but you have to have that vision at the early stage or you don't get through it because the economics don't. Anybody gets in business just for the money rarely makes it.
Yeah.
Because you won't make it
So
through those
important.
stages, right? Won't make it.
I loved it. I loved the process. I love the process. I was fortunate enough to be able to discover the process while I was in prison before I made any money or even knew I was going to make money. I just thought, wow, I'm developing this skill, and I started believing that I could develop any skill. I could do anything if I worked hard enough at it.
Yes.
And that's really what Dave's Killer Bread, what culminated in Dave's Killer Bread. But those early years were all just, they were in prison. It didn't matter. I was like, you can be happy wherever you're at.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lesson that a lot of billionaires don't have, right? So that's awesome. Tell me, one of the things I loved about what you did is that you were given a second chance and that you gave, I think, about a third of your employees a second chance, meaning tell people a little about the program you did with people that are getting out of correction institutions and giving them an opportunity.
Well, it's funny. It wasn't really a program. It is now, and I'm not part of it anymore. It became that way because we experimented. What we did is we, because of my success and my experience, it seemed obvious that other people could be excellent resources.
Yes.
Human resources. And so we, without even really saying, we're going to hire a third felons or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Wow.
Because what happened is once we started doing it, you got to realize we ended up hiring 300 people in a fairly, couple years. There was like 50 or 100 in 1 year, and whatever it was. The early part was really tough because we didn't have an HR person. It was just us, and we didn't really know how to deal with all this growth. And these kids, or these people, these guys, they're kind of kids to me. They'd get out, and what they do is they go look for a job through a temp agency. And this temp agency, once they figured out Dave's Killer Bread is hiring felons, they started sending all their felons to it. and I was like, no. That's not how we roll. We want the best. We want the best people.
That's right. I want you all to hear that. He said, we want the best people. We don't care what they're felons or not, but we want the best people.
And felons can be amazing.
Yeah.
They really can.
They can be very resourceful.
They're trying to come back.
Yeah.
They're motivated. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And that program continues to this day, I guess, huh? Even after
Yeah.
So 6 years after you're in the business, you're one of the fastest growing companies. 11 years, if I understand correctly, you sell the business to the giant bakery, the company that has Wonder
Second
Bread.
biggest bakery in the world.
Yeah, $4 billion in business.
Something like that, yeah.
And you sell for what, 226 million or something like that?
275.
275 million.
I didn't get a whole lot of that.
Oh, well, how much did you get?
I got enough.
You got enough?
I don't remember how much I got, but it was in the tens of millions.
Well, that's not a bad thing. Nice one, buddy. So tell me, during that time, before you sold the business, there was a lot of stress going through you, and you shared with it on the video. This is what a lot of people don't understand. It's like we all have comfort zones, right? And it's like if you set the thing at 69 degrees in this room and it goes to 62, 61, 59, heat comes up. You got to do something. You hit that place where you hit rock bottom. You got to do something to make it better. Yeah. But most people don't know what happens on the other side. You think you're at 69 and that's your identity, and you heat up to 75, 80, 90, 98. All of a sudden the brain goes, "Who the hell do you think you are?" Right? And you start to sabotage your own success. So you went through that, right?
They fall, right?
What's that?
Bigger they get, the harder they fall.
Yeah, true. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what happened after you'd become successful, before you sold the business, but you were really successful and some of the old patterns kind of took over. What was that about and what'd you learn from it?
I don't know if it was so much old patterns. In a way it was just settling and becoming, taking, not putting that 100%, the humility, all the great lessons that I learned, not putting them in front of me and remembering them. Yeah. More likely, you start drinking. I went to Mexico with my now wife. We discovered tequila. I swear to God, I never stopped drinking after that. Anyway, I don't know. So then we went to we came back from there, and we just kept partying. I mean, I had a great place to party. I had this. My voice sounds like yours.
Yeah, it does.
So now, I mean, actually, we kind of stay in the same place that we had back then. I ended up buying a penthouse, and then realizing it was a really badass penthouse at the top of a building downtown Portland.
It became Party Central.
We're getting rid of it now, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, and we partied there too. But anyway, we started partying, and the point is, everything was cool, but I don't know how to tell the story without making it long. So I'm just going to say by 2012, 13, I was kind of out of control, but I was still handling my business,
Yeah.
But I was drinking a lot. And so I had, God, I don't even want to blame anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's just like I screwed up, and eventually I actually quit drinking for like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Michelle would know. And driving to Seattle and back from Portland, and I decided to drink because I was going mental. You're going so mental, you got
Yeah.
And I've never done that before.
Yeah.
I'd never had that kind of mental takeover
Yeah.
that I couldn't handle. And long story short, I smashed into 3 cop cars that night.
Wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't looking to be a criminal. My behavior wasn't like it used to be. It was different. It was different. That's my point.
Interesting. Michael Phelps is a friend of mine, and I've interviewed a lot of people over the years who are my clients or friends. He's got more gold medals than most, a lot of countries have, to give you an idea in that area, like 68 or whatever the
He knows some great people.
It's insane. And, he was depressed after all this.
Yeah.
And several other gold medals that I've gotten to know and worked with over the years, they won, and then it's there because people think that I'm going to get someplace, and then life's going to be beautiful. And what they failed to understand is that life's really about serving and growing and giving, right? So, and that humility part of you just kind of popped out for a little time, but it sounds like it's returned for you.
I think so, because I value it. I value it, so I come back to it. But that's absolutely true. I think people, this is a really important thing to learn in life, is that you're not going to get there. You know what I mean? It's never going to happen.
Oh.
You got to get there. You got to be there now as part of your process.
That's right.
And I learned to do that. The design process of my life is what makes me happy, I guess.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Tell me, you sold your business, made tens of millions of dollars, have kind of a cool legacy that's continuing. So what's up with you now? What do you do with your life now? And by the way, I have a lot of friends that sold their businesses. I remember one of my early friends sold his business and made over $1 billion. Mm-hmm. And he was excited for about 90 days. And then I saw him he was always calling me up going, hey, you want to go to this beach? And I was like, dude, I got like 12 companies at that time I got to manage. I don't have the time. I love you. I don't have the time. And then he tried to buy back his business, and he couldn't get it back. And then eventually he waited it out. He started some other, and then he went back and competed with his own business once his time was up. But I've seen so many entrepreneurs think that, boy, once I have this certain amount of money, or once I sell the business, I'm gonna be happy. And the business actually met a lot of their needs. They got to use the certainty inside. They got to push themselves. They got to grow. Yeah. They got to have variety and challenges. And someone to contribute to, a meaning, a connection to people, connection to the brand. And then that vehicle's gone. So unless you get a new vehicle, which anybody can, it can be nonprofit, it can be all kinds of things, then you see this drop. That's why I always tell people, when you're getting near the top, if you're going to sell it, you better figure out what you're going to do next before you do that, because otherwise I've seen people, and I even had it myself at one stage in my career years ago, there's this little drop where you're like, what happened? Because your vehicle becomes such a way to meet so many of your psychological, spiritual, and emotional needs, not just financial, obviously. Yeah. So what happened, first of all, when you sold the business, what did you feel, what did you think? And then did it stick around? Did you get depressed? Did you get frustrated? What happened afterwards? And then tell us what you're doing today that you love.
Wow, that's like a book right there. But
when you first sold it, were you excited to sell it?
I felt like it was necessary. It was time. It had come to a point where it wasn't my company anymore the way I was passionate about it. And
So
stuff.
it had grown so much.
Yeah, and there was just things were going the wrong direction for me, sideways, if you will.
Yeah.
It wasn't going bad. It just wasn't my thing. You know, I created this thing with logo for every variety of bread.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all the fun we used to have, and they just, I hate to say it, but they that's not their style.
Yeah.
So they're doing good things. So I'm not saying anything bad about it, but
Which is different than what your needs were.
Yeah.
By the way, I see that with so many entrepreneurs, and Payel's only 10 years into it, and she's a billion business, so she's not like she's short.
amazing.
But she's amazing. But I think you see this in businesses that in the early days, very often there's this connection, you know everybody, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And unless you can find those ways to keep the mission alive, sometimes, you know, the most exciting time is sometimes the most difficult early days. Like a lot of my entrepreneur friends, when we all get around, we talk about the times when, like, I showed up and supposed to be 1,000 people there and 7 people showed up and I called them to the front row to do a 4-day seminar, you know?
Exactly.
But it's what made you grow, right?
Well, there was a lot of growth aspects from the time, I mean, I guess my whole life, but from the time I was 38 and had that turnaround in prison,
Yeah.
there was growth after growth after growth. And they weren't cancerous growths either. Not yet.
Yes.
But anyway, so I had so much fun. You know, growing is the funnest thing in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's just part of what you do that makes life good, right?
Yeah.
Without growing, what is there to do? You know, so I was never willing to sit on my butt, right, and just not have something going on. So when I sold, what I did is the first thing I did really was I went on eBay and I started buying freaking African masks of all things. You know,
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why African masks? What did that mean to you?
Well, it wasn't that they were African. It was just that they were primitive and cool. None of them were real. They were just, because there's a difference. You got and I have a business now where I have maybe tens of thousands of African masks and stuff, and figures and stitched statues. But I don't promote it that much, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's your passion.
It's a passion, and my main passion has become more the pieces that were danced and used in ceremonies and things like that. Oh. But I mean, I just love the spiritual aspect of it, believe it or not. It's weird, but I just do. I'm weirdo. So I did that, and then it got out of control, just like everything in my life. And it's working out pretty good. You know, we don't make any money, but I employ several people, so that's good.
Yeah.
And then I'm a philanthropist. So
Tell us about some things you do with philanthropy. I'm curious.
Well, I'm going to talk about Constructing Hope. It's my favorite one, and the reason why I like it so much, and I've helped them out a lot, you know, as best I can. And the reason I like them so much is the fact that construction is really what changed my life. Even though I wasn't actually doing the hands-on construction.
Yeah.
I was creating things that other people were constructing,
Yeah.
and I was having such a blast at it. I realized the power of it to change lives.
Yeah.
And so now I've seen it happen over and over again, so I get involved with that sort of thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be construction, but it just happens to be something I'm passionate about.
You must have people approach you also. Whenever you're a successful entrepreneur, everybody wants to be coached by you as if you have all this extra time. Right?
I like to help if I can.
But I bet you do. So when you meet somebody who's got a business and they're struggling initially, what advice do you give them?
Well, you know, I'd have to hear more about it.
Yeah, what's the specific business?
Yeah, because like, for instance, the struggles that we had were complicated. We had struggles with just getting up and hanging out together. You know, we hated
Getting along.
We kind of hated each other, right? None of us are bad guys, but we don't get along. So, you know, we did get along once we sold the business. It's different.
Oh, that's nice.
But anyway, no, I say you're going to struggle. I say struggle is good.
Yeah.
I say without struggle, you're not going to become the person you're going to be.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, just own it, live it. You're not going to enjoy every minute of it, but you're going to be tough. You're going to get a little tougher.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's important.
So true. Well, you both are wonderful. I'm going to ask for some questions from the audience, if it's okay for the both of you. We're going to pile back into this as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let's have a big hand for Dave. Give it up for Dave and Payal, both of them, ladies and gentlemen. Let them hear you. Let them hear you. Let's go for some questions here. First, it's Brian. Give it up for Brian, ladies and gentlemen. So, who do you have a question for, and what's your question?
Yeah, so I have a question actually for Dave, but also for both of you and Payal. The question is really like, what was like? I'm curious, like, what was like the moment where you really felt the biggest turnaround? I mean, especially for Dave, like, you know, I'm so grateful that you shared so much of your life with us today. It was so incredible. It opened up so much access for me and so much for so many of us. I'm sure that you know, I'm humbled to be you know, learning from you, Dave, and learning from you, Payal, and all that you're doing. It's absolutely incredible. And I would just love to know, like, what was like the turnaround? What was like the moment that made that happen for you, that made that shift? I mean, all that you shared with us, Dave. So I'd love to hear that, and also for Payal.
If there was one moment, it was when I dropped a kite in the box. I was 38 years old, dropped a piece of paper asking for help from the psychiatric services, which is a big deal. You know, in prison, you don't really want to show your weakness.
Especially in prison.
Yeah. It was a big deal for me, and it changed everything.
What made you do it that day? Because you could have done it any day, and you didn't. What was it about that day? Was it that much more pain? Was it something you envisioned? What was it?
It's that bottom that you find, you know, that beautiful bottom. Yeah. I mean, it was that moment. And God, it's just a blissful, and it's not blissful, it's just so blessed.
Blessed, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But why do you think after all those years, why that moment? What brought you to that moment? Because there were years and years. What made that the bottom? Do you know?
Well, I always thought for many years while I was going to prison, because I was dumb, I always thought that I could be a better criminal. You know, I could get better at being a drug dealer and all this kind of stuff, which I always got better at doing, but I always got better at going to prison too. So I just remember that, you know, I actually, you know, started learning to be better at crime, but then on the fourth time, it was like, this ain't gonna work. You know, this is not gonna work, Dave. You're just not good at crime. or much of anything else either. So, but I found that I was good, you know, once I hit that bottom, because I spent every night in misery, it seemed like, you know, and then I'd have to I couldn't sleep a lot of times. Wake up sweating, bad dreams, just horrible dreams, getting out of prison and coming back, you know, that's the kind of dreams I was having.
And when did you know that things had turned around? When was the time you owned the turnaround?
Well, not much longer after that, because it was like such a relief. And all of a sudden I had self-esteem, but it was a healthy self-esteem. And I knew that I was capable. Once I started realizing that I was capable of doing things I didn't realize I was.
Was that during the class when you started creating things?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think that was it. When I started designing, you know, all different sorts of things on the computer, 3D space. It was very powerful. First of all, I didn't know something like this existed, and that you could have that much power at your fingertips.
Yes.
And but then it was like, wait a minute, you know, these are things I never would have imagined that I could do. So
it shifted it all.
Yeah, I just started believing in myself in a very healthy way.
Yeah. Payal, your journey was very different, but there was the stage for you where you were hiding who you were to some extent, right? And then there's the shift. You told us a little bit about the guru, the teacher that really made a difference for you. But what was a moment for you? Is there a moment you can remember where that shift happened for you? And what was a moment when you felt like, hey, you know, I really have a tiger by the tail?
So I think for me, I dealt with this dual identity my entire life. I just felt like I never fit in. I think that's something all of us feel. And I was going to work every day, but I was so in love with something else that I was doing, which was dancing.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was two different people. And no one wants to live like that, right? And I think I had done that when I was younger. I split myself in two. I was Indian with my Indian friends, and I was American at school. And I tried to be two different people, and it's just not a happy way to live.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, with all the pressure I had to have a good, good.
Be the best.
Yeah, exactly. Be the best, but have a good education, be at a good job, and make sure that I was stable and all of that. I felt like I couldn't go after my dreams, and at some point, and this was a really important conversation for me. I was home for Thanksgiving, and I didn't want to go back to work the next day. I was like, I had that feeling where just didn't want to go back. It didn't feel right. I had had successful dance shows by that point. My dance company was succeeding, but I was living two lives. And my mom looked at me, and this was really important because it came from her. She goes, then quit. And to have that from, once again, my immigrant mom who risked her entire life for me and my sister to say that to me unleashed me. And then I quit my job a month later. I said I was going to go for my dreams. And I didn't actually even know I was going to build ClassPass at the time. I didn't even know entrepreneurship was what I was going to do. But I just knew I needed to give myself the space and time to be free.
You also gave yourself a timeline, if I read correctly, like 14 days or something like that. When you were you at Warner at the time, and you said, "I'm going to find what my passion's going to be or what my business is going to be." What made you decide? I love a deadline like that,
Yeah.
because I think some people don't give themselves a deadline, so they don't make it happen.
Right.
Your deadline was, I got to do this now, right? Because I can't live this anymore. But what made you give that deadline, and what did that do to you to have that deadline? Why did you come up with that?
I mean, I was, unmotivated at work, and I knew I needed a shift. I actually went out to San Francisco and met a bunch of entrepreneurs because 10 years ago, it wasn't the biggest thing in New York City. It really was just kind of tied to Silicon Valley. Yeah. And everyone was building apps and products. And I looked at myself, and I was creative, and I had this business background. And I started thinking, what if I could think of something? And I know the 2-week thing was interesting, and everyone always asked me about it. But for me, it was, if I can think of something, this is an option for me. If I can't, maybe I should explore new jobs or new, a new position at my company.
So it wasn't a commitment, I'm going to have my own business. It was, I need to find something, or I got to look for
if I didn't have anything, I probably wasn't going to become an entrepreneur at the time. I just got lucky, and 2 days later was looking for a ballet class that changed the rest of my life.
Oh. And at what point did you feel like you got a tiger by the tail? Because the first 2 iterations didn't work, right? And were you stressed at that time that they're not working, or did you still feel certain it was going to work?
During the time of it, once I figured out what I wanted to solve and how passionate I was, I never thought I was going to fail. And I think that's when you really know you're an entrepreneur, is that you know you're going to work through every part of it. I knew I was going to figure it out. I don't know if the universe was helping me. Like, I look back on it, and it doesn't actually feel that hard because I feel like I was so in tune with the problem I was solving that I was going to do it no matter what. And I think a lot of people always think that a startup is working when you have like 10,000 users and you have that hockey stick growth. For me, it was reading 5 emails. I was doing customer service, and it was emails I received from people that
thanking you.
They were just told me that this product changed their life. And I think because for me, I wanted to give people what dance meant to me my whole life. I felt lucky my whole life that I found something I loved when I was 3. Right? Like, I found my passion when I was 3, and I realized that's not what most people get to do. And I was enlightened with that since I was so young. Yeah. And I felt like my job on earth was to give that enlightenment to other people. Yeah. And when I got those emails, I knew I had given them what dance was to me in another way.
That's really beautiful. Look, I mean, you think about this, you said it wasn't that hard. What's hard is doing what you hate.
Yeah.
Right? What's easy is doing what you love.
Exactly.
And
I miss those early days.
It may be
too.
hard work, but it's not hard. That's
Absolutely.
the difference, right? It's not hard inside. You don't have that inner conflict anymore. Absolutely. Both of you have found that way where there's no inner conflict. I always tell people that if you look at it as a business, there's only so much energy. And business and life is energy. And it's divided between internal marketing and external marketing. If you're a great business, all your energy is going to serve customers. But if there's internal marketing conflicts with a team, conflicts within yourself, it's hard to make the job work. That's the hard part. But you had that unification at an early stage, and you just brought it back. It's gorgeous. Okay, thank you so much, Brian. Let's go for another question. The next person, give him a hand. Thanks, Brian. Give it up for Sarah Foley, ladies and gentlemen. Sarah Foley. Well, tell us, Sarah, who do you want to ask a question to?
My question actually is for Payal, because I have this dream of doing fitness for women that have physical disabilities, and doing it on platforms such as ClassPass. And when I think of things like ClassPass and these companies, I see the vision come to life, but it gets so big, and it's so hard to know, like, in my living room by myself, like, how do I make it happen? Like, that first step of just once that belief is there, and I know it in my soul, and this whole weekend I just felt myself like, one day you'll be on that stage, Sarah, like you'll be one of them. And the belief's there, and it's just so hard to know, like, step 1.5, step 2. And so any advice on those very early stages?
I want her to answer you, but I'd like to plant a seed with you. You're already one of them.
Yeah.
It's this illusion that you're not one of them. You just have a pathway that you're just beginning. Dave's been on the path for a long time. Pael's been on the path for a decade. I've been on the path for 43 years. So when you look around, you look at people, I used to do this too, and you go, oh my God, I'm not where they are. And what I was doing is I was judging myself too soon. And you're judging yourself too soon. So your passion and your caring is so evident. Mm-hmm. With that, anyone can get the skill.
Yeah.
But I'll let Pael answer your question because she can answer it from a feminine perspective rather than my masculine perspective, which I think is what you really need. But I hope I plant a seed with you. Stop thinking you're going to be there someday.
I agree.
If you have that desire to serve, because that's what both these people have.
Absolutely.
Both these people, and the reason I reached out to them is they're servants. They really are. They've learned to serve a large number of people, so they've become successful in business and economics. And you serve a small number of people, your still life matters. And it all starts small. None of us start. I started the story I just mentioned. I started with running these ads and think I get 500 people, and I was charging nothing. I just wanted to help people. And I thought, I'm going to have 500 people, and 7 people showed up, and they were all around the room in different locations. Like, well, you come down to the front row, and I did 4 days for 7 people day and night. Now I do 920,000 people for 6 days in this room, people in 195 countries. So you're just judging too soon. But again, the how is interesting. The why, the what and the why is the most important thing. And then you can figure out the how. Remember, we talked about the tyranny of how. But I know you want that answer as well, and I'm not going to step on it. So, Pael,
Tony just answered that beautifully. And it really comes down to just get started, right? Teaching one person or teaching 1 million is the same exact thing. And you have that care in your heart. We can all see it. It's so beautiful. And you have a deep why already, which is, most people lack that, to be honest, most of the time in these situations. You have that, just start giving that out to the world, and the steps will get easier, but start with one person. And set a goal, right? I think this is the other thing that sometimes people miss. Try and teach one person this month, and next month, make it 5, right? Start somewhere and set realistic goals, and then just keep doing it, and your heart is going to be so filled from the process. Like I said, it took me 3 years to get these 5 emails, right? It wasn't easy. And I was lost in the first few years because I had 1 million classes up there thinking if I got 10,000 people to sign up, I was going to have a business. And that didn't work. I actually had to just go and get 5 people to class, right? It's very simple. Start with the beginning, get the people to show up, and you just have to get started and believe in yourself to do it.
You also have a niche. Most people are not looking to help someone with fitness who's in that physical and emotional and psychological position that you described. And your caring for them will make them love you. Love is the real currency of business, in my opinion. Business is a spiritual game. You've heard me say it. What that really means is if you can do more for others than anybody else and you do it consistently and you keep improving, then your gifts will make room for you because you're here to serve something more than yourself. Dave, what would be your point of view on this?
That's what I've noticed. As soon as they start believing in themselves, then they want to know, like, what else can I do? What else can I do? And that's the most beautiful part of it all.
But you're believing in him first. Dave has done that for guys coming out of prison. He did it for himself, and now he's doing it for others.
Pass it along. I see the passion.
Yeah, me too.
What I mean? And that excites me.
Yeah, me too.
I can't imagine her not succeeding if she stays this way.
Yes.
That's what I think.
That's right. And so the secret is not to let your disappointment destroy you, but to let disappointment drive you. That's the common denominator on everyone sitting in the chairs here. If you say you want to be us, you really want to be you, but you want to be the best you. And the best you is the one that will not give up because they have something they want to serve more than themselves.
Absolutely.
And if you have that and you keep that and you just keep improving, you keep doing what's in front of you next, it'll appear. The gifts will make room for you. That's my message to all of you, but especially you, because I can feel 1,000,000%, all 3 of us, we're all lit up looking at you. It's not how you look. It's your essence that's coming through this video. It's coming across electronically. We're not even in your presence, and we all can feel you.
Halo.
Yeah, it's a halo. Exactly right.
Halo, absolutely.
You've got all that it takes.
Shining.
You're already one of us. Just go now, unfold it, and trust in God and do your part.
You're glowing.
Thank you.
Give it a hand for Sarah. Give it up for Daniel Cohen, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel! Who do you have a question for, Daniel?
Well, I have a question for all three of you. I'm standing guard, protecting my experience, growing with my family. I'm 38 years old, and I'm super ambitious. I'm super driven. But I know that there's sometimes a temptation to give up some of those things that matter so much in exchange for, say, growth or expansion in business or making more money. So I'd love to hear from you guys where you felt like you were challenged, where you were being distracted or pulled into something for your business, and there was something that you were leaving, something that you were giving up on your personal side. And how did you stand guard to protect the balance?
Beautiful question.
Between the expansion and, you know, your personal expansion and your business expansion?
It's a tough question, but it's a good one.
Yes, we'll go with you since it's a tough question.
Man, I should have said that. You know, a lot of the times it comes down to your values, your morals. If you stick with what you believe, then I don't think you can go wrong. You can't, if you start compromising, then, you know, that's not Dave's Killer Bread's way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I was never willing to compromise. There were choices I had to make that weren't, you know, you talk about ingredients and things like that. There were choices. There was like the best of two terrible choices that you had to make. But in general, I just didn't compromise who I was. Was that your question, kind of?
Yeah, he's asking also, I think, the pull on family, perhaps, and other aspects of your life as well. But you're right.
Well, let me say that real quick, because if I had gotten out of prison and I had a family that was like pulling on me, I would have had a hard time doing what I did.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's tough. I'm not saying it can't be done, but man, I don't know how it would work for me. It'd probably take me a lot more time.
Yeah.
So, you know, because I was always willing to give all my time to my work.
I can say in my own case, and then I'll give you from her perspective. You know, I married a woman who had 3 children. She'd been married twice before me. And then I had my own child on the way. So I was literally 24 years old, just about turned 25, and I had a 17-year-old son, because she was 13 years my senior, an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a child on the way. And I wanted to change the world. I had this incredible desire to serve, and I wanted to take people out of pain. It's still what drives me. I don't have to work another day in my life, but I hate suffering, and I love seeing people lit up. And so I wanted to have those answers, and I was driven. But then all of a sudden, I'm 24, and I got a 17-year-old son, and he was a drug addict. So it's like instantly I had to figure out how to prioritize. I can't put all the energy out there. But rather than saying I'm going to compromise, you know, I remember I asked Mary Callan Erdos, who's head of JP Morgan, and she manages like $2.2 trillion, probably the single most influential woman in the financial world. And she's a beautiful soul. And I asked her, like, tell me about how do you deal with family and all these things? And she goes, you know, Tony, everybody talks about life balance, you know, life-work balance. She goes, it's total bullshit. See, you have to have life-work integration. And it's totally true for me. I took my kids with me on the road for a period of time. Then after a while, I realized, you know, need consistency. So I had to leave and come back, and it was hard. And it's never easy, but it's worth it. And I wasn't willing to compromise either one. And to this day, you know, my kids are my kids. 3 of my kids, now I have 5 kids. I have a 4-month-old now. So I'm starting the journey all over again. I have 5 grandkids. But along the way, all those challenges served because I had to grow. I had to be able to help other people. And the fact that I had to deal with 4 kids that instantly showed up in my life, it made me grow in ways I wouldn't have grown if I could have just worked on my mission, per se. And so I have a trust in God or the universe or whatever you want to call it. We've all been created by something. And there's a gift that we're here to give to the world. And sometimes that gift is different than what you think it is. And so I've learned to find that gift wherever I am. And so when my kids showed up, that was a gigantic gift. It brought all kinds of challenges. How do I still do the business too? How do I go on the road? I was torn. It was painful. I never want to be apart from my wife. I love her every moment. We travel most of the time. And then she had motion sickness. So it's just like, you know, it's like I'm Mr. Motion. You know, I'm going to, you know, an average year, I'd go to like 115 cities. I'd go to 14 countries, you know, and like, what are we doing here? But you figure it out. And so I think you've got to decide that you're not going to compromise and that it won't be equal. It's never equal. Sometimes you got to put more in one place more than the other, but it's worth it. And that it's going to make you a better human, a better soul, a better man, a better husband, a better business person, and that people will feel that. When you get up and talk, people can feel when there's something deeper than the surface. They feel it in a very short period of time, and they're moved by it because it's real. And real is not perfect, and real is not, oh, I'm able to manage all this in a perfect balance. It's you finding your way. And you're young, and you're on the journey, and I think it's exciting. How would you look at this?
So I would say this question, which is a beautiful question, really relates to two big aspects of my life. The first one was my pressure of not dancing anymore once I became this founder, and everyone and my investors didn't want me doing anything else, obviously, but run my company. But I had my dance company, and I loved dancing, and it was the actual why behind everything I had created. And I remember I actually did stop a little bit, and it was the worst time for me. It was probably the worst time for the business because I was not as inspired as to what I was creating and why. And I remember needing to make changes on my team, even in my role at my company, because I didn't want to lose my why and what had enlightened me to create all of this. And it took me some deep work to do that. But now, and I will say COVID is a blessing for me personally because it gave me so much time to dance. And I am so grateful for that because I was always traveling and moving around. So with that, I figured it out, but it does take prioritization and planning. The other big aspect is I'm a woman, and I built a company when I was in, my late 20s, and I had a lot of pressure from my parents to get married, have kids, a lot of things like that. And and it was really hard. And I remember there were times where my parents would be like, hey, I want to share that I was like in Forbes, and they'd be like, great, like, who are you dating? When are you getting married? And it was a really hard conversation, being an Indian woman, especially, everyone was getting married. I remember on my 30th birthday, I threw a dance show because I didn't want to like put focus on my age and the fact that I was 30 and I wasn't married, because to my parents that felt like they were failing in some way when I told them it would happen. And I ended up getting married when I was 33 years old, and I had a baby when I was 36, and I have an 18-month-old son now. And I remember just telling everyone, thank you. I just remember telling everyone, I'm going to do this on my timeline. And I felt very comfortable saying that. And anytime someone asks me, which happens especially to women, you just have to say, I'm going to do it when I'm ready, instead of doing it on anyone else's timeline. And the universe will work with you to make those decisions happen when they're meant to. Of course, my mom's always like, oh yeah, this was always meant to be now. But, it's...
Well, now that you're married, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just always easier after. But,
that's awesome.
Just let the world and let the universe take its place in those decisions in your life. Don't rush things. And I think for women, obviously with, having kids and stuff, it can feel a little bit of time pressure, but it's really important to enjoy your life more than anything and love what you do.
Does that answer your question, Daniel?
Perfect.
Give him a hand. Let's give it a hand to Dave and Dahl, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful session.
The Tony Robbins Podcast is directed by Tony Robbins and produced by the Tony Robbins team. Copyright Robbins Research International.